Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the next episode. Today I'm going to share my story, some of my background and how I became Muslim and some of the things that have happened to me, most of which have been positive, but maybe just to share some reflections on my experience of life living as a Muslim in Britain and some of what that means to me. So I was born and brought up in a family which wasn't religious. So they were not atheists or unbelievers, but they didn't really follow a formal religion. When I was very young, my parents split up and actually divorced, and then I grew up in a home with my mum, with my siblings, and my mum remarried, so I had a stepfather living with us. So I had a very positive childhood, apart from the fact that my parents were divorced, but otherwise it was fine. Went to school, went to secondary school in my local area, and generally look back at childhood as with very good memories. When I started in the area that I lived, it was very much one type of people, kind of white British. And it wasn't very diverse. We didn't really interact with people from different backgrounds where I lived. As I got older and started, I did my exams, went through school, and when I started working in a place which was in an area nearer London, which was more diverse. And so in my office, I was working in an insurance company, and in my office, I was doing a sales job, and over there were people from different backgrounds. And it was at that time that my eyes opened up, and I realised that the world that I had previously lived in was good, but there was a lot more out there, and there was a lot more to offer, and there was a lot more that I could learn and benefit from. So up to that point, I had been really living just day to day, not really thinking about what would happen to me in my life, or not really thinking about what would happen when I died, not thinking about any kind of afterlife or anything like that. Living happily. And then when I got into contact with some people from different backgrounds, Muslims as well as people from other faiths and from different countries, I realised that there was more to life than what I had been living. So at the age of about 18 or 19, when I started working, I left school and started working, my eyes opened up, and I realised that there was more that I could learn. And at that time, I remember there were one or two people who were Muslim that were working in our office, and I can remember one of them would pray in our office a couple of times a day throughout his working day. And when you're not used to that, and when it's something that you've never experienced before, it can actually have a big impression, and it can make an impact. And although I'd never really prayed up to that point, it was something that struck me that he was committed to his faith, and was able to show that by praying even when he was working. Just take a break, pray, and then carry on. And that was perfectly acceptable in that office, even though most of the people there obviously weren't Muslim. So that made an impression on me, and he also fasted. And I remember at the time Ramadan was very long days for us in the summer here. They're very long, and I couldn't understand how he managed to do that, but he fasted as well. So these two things did make an impression on me, and it was something that I always remembered. And then I remember him and other people. At that time, the Iraq war happened, and the first Iraq war, and that was obviously very negative, very political, and an international story, but was having a big impact on people here. And again, I think I'd lived in a kind of way where I hadn't really been exposed to these kinds of things, and that also, while I didn't really understand what was happening fully, but I felt there was something I needed to be a bit more aware of, and that, you know, life as I had known it perhaps wasn't as broad as it could be. So these few things happened. It was all around kind of 1990 time, and I carried on working and being around these people, making friends with them. And then there was one Muslim at this workplace that actually used to speak to me a bit more, and he gave me some leaflets and some booklets on and off, or we would just discuss things. And I remember one of the booklets that I read was about the science and the miracles in the Quran, and I had never been interested in science before that at school, but this booklet, tiny booklet, mentioned things like the life cycle and some of the things in nature that were really there in the Quran from 1400 years ago that people are only really discovering now. And for a lot of people who don't understand Islam, this is one thing that can really have an impression, and it did have an impression on me. So after a time of reading, and then I met some Muslims as well. I met some Muslim women. I went to a couple of events where it was all Muslim, and I remember going to one, and obviously I wasn't Muslim, but I remember going to one and it was just women, and they were treating me or talking to me as if I was Muslim. And I remember feeling that was quite interesting, because up to that point I'd thought you'd had to dress in a certain way or look a certain way to be a Muslim, and actually they were all saying to me, when did you become Muslim? And I thought, well, I'm not Muslim. But that showed me that there was this acceptance or this diversity. Clearly I wouldn't have had a scarf on. I wasn't Muslim. I didn't dress or look in any way different to how I had before. But they felt that maybe I was. So that actually was quite an impression on me, because I thought they were accepting me for whoever I was, whether I was Muslim or not. So that was something that was very prominent for me in my memory. And after that, for just a couple of years, I just read, I met people, and I became much more interested. And I think the one thing that really struck me, and I always remember it, was the simplicity of the message. The actual core beliefs themselves are very, very simple. And it's actually sometimes Muslims and people that complicate what is otherwise a very simple, beautiful faith, belief that we can follow very easily. So that, once I'd realised that, everything else then kind of started to fall into place. And over about 4 or 5 years, really, actually quite a long time for me, I started to realise that actually I felt more comfortable with the idea of being Muslim than not. And once you get that in your heart, then it's very, you kind of almost can't ignore it. It's just a natural feeling that happens. And I didn't really focus on the negative side, the sort of politics or other things that weren't really of interest to me, but the actual core belief seemed something that really did appeal to me. And after some time, I decided that I felt like I was a Muslim, but it was just then about how do I tell people, what will the reaction be, what will my family say, what will my friends at work do, how does it make a difference to me. But I just felt that I was making a mistake, or not really being true to myself if I didn't then become a Muslim. So after a number of years of those initial kind of conversations and meetings, I did actually decide to become a Muslim. And I just chose to go and meet an imam at a local mosque fairly close to my area, and just do my shahada with him. So there was no kind of ceremony or anything like that. I just did it with him. There was just a couple of me and one friend and a couple of other people there. And it was a really big moment for me. And then I remember having to go home and tell my family that that's where I'd just been. And at that time I was obviously living at home with my parents and my sister. And I still remember going in and saying to them, I need you to turn the TV off, I've got something to say. And they were, what's it going to be, having no idea what I was going to say. So then I just told them, and their reaction was just one of, they were just calm and quiet, and I suppose they had some idea that I was interested, but they weren't necessarily expecting me to become Muslim. And I would say thereafter, from there onwards, throughout, even to now, my family have been, always been supportive, always wanting to understand about me and my life and what I'm doing, and never given me any problems. And actually I think I've been quite ungrateful in not always acknowledging enough of what they have done, because I have, there are other people, women and men, who become Muslim and their family literally kind of reject them. That happens in Britain, happens probably all over the world, because people just don't understand or don't know what to expect. And for me, it was, I've always had so much support from my family, mum, dad, stepdad, sisters. So that's been really touching for me, and still is. And I think the only thing I can claim is that I've always tried to be open with them and explain to them what I'm doing and what things are about, and that also explain to them that Islam and my life is a journey, and that if I change my mind about certain things or change the way I do things throughout that journey, that's fine, because that's part of what life as a Muslim is about learning and changing and growing. So they've always been open to that as well, that we sometimes, change the ways we do things or adapt things slightly, and they're happy with that. And obviously now that I have my own children, they are part and parcel of my family, and so it's all been, I'm very, very lucky. It's been very positive. 1 year later I got married, so my husband was born in Britain, but his family are from Pakistan. And again, I've been very blessed with a wonderful family on his side as well, who've all been understanding, even though at the time, even though I was Muslim and I wasn't from the same background, some of them did struggle to initially accept that he would marry somebody that wasn't from his background, even if I was Muslim. But after some time of discussions and difficult, challenging conversations, they finally did come round. So everybody on the day we got married was happy with it, and I think have since seen how being from different backgrounds has actually been a positive thing for us, and that we have learned. And I've been to Pakistan a couple of times, and my children obviously got family in both, and I think for me it's actually a strength, not a weakness. And I feel very blessed with having a good marriage, and we've now got 4 children and all of the goods and bads that go with that. And I think we're very lucky, and we're very much part of my family as we are part of his family, and we've kind of brought 2 different cultures together. And for us, the commonality for us, of course, is that we're Muslim, but nobody else in my family is Muslim. So it's just me. And then very quickly I became involved in community work, realising that there was work that needed to be done with Muslims, also to help people who weren't Muslim to understand what people like me are doing, and why on earth would somebody like me become Muslim, cover my head, and do the things that we all know that Muslims do. And so for me, part of my work has always been about helping people to understand that. And I think since things have become negative and the impression of Islam is negative, even more so in the last 10 years or so, and I've been Muslim now for 18 years, I think to sort of redress that balance is just really, really important, how we do it, and learn from the examples of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And that's what I always do. So now I have a crazy, busy, but very fulfilled life in activism, being an activist, a community worker, doing voluntary work, working in both with Muslims and people of all backgrounds, trying to bring different faiths together. Whatever I can do to that kind of positive work is what I try and do now. And I get frustrated that there aren't more people that do that kind of work, but I just try and work with the best people I can. So I think I've always, as I get older, and now that I am a mother, I realise the role that my own mother has played in my life, and actually my grandmother as well. So my grandmother passed away recently, and I realised that the way she was with people and the way she dealt with everyone, and the fact that nobody had anything bad to say about her, are qualities that you kind of take for granted when the person's around. When they pass away, you notice it more. And with my own mother, I think one of the things that I've always valued and I've benefited from, and she doesn't even really realise this, is that she's actually very accepting of anyone about anything. So all of us as her children and other people in the family have all benefited from this way of being able to just accept that, look, things don't always go according to what you may think they will in your plan of life, but they're your children, or they're your partners, or they're people in your family, and you have to support and accept it anyway, even if it's not what you think it should be. So for me, becoming Muslim, for marrying somebody from an Asian background, for some families that's very difficult to accept or to understand. But my family, I think, with my mum at the heart of it, from my grandmother, has always been very accepting and has taught me as well that that's what I need to do. And that I'm reminded that when my children grow up, and even now, they'll do things that maybe I don't really want them to do, or they'll, as they become adults, they might make decisions that I don't want them to make, but they are our children and we do what we can, and then in the end we love them and keep them with us, and that's what I've really benefited from. And so I think around that, my family, around my mother are all quite accepting of each other and our ups and downs. And so for me, becoming a Muslim is a big thing for some families. As I say, some families totally reject somebody who becomes Muslim in the family. Mine have been amazing. And actually for them, I'm just me. I mean, I'm just who I've always been. So I think one of the tricky, kind of difficult things for converts is to see and learn about this amazing faith, but to then meet Muslims and realise that sometimes the teachings and the practices of Muslims are sometimes different to each other, which is a shame. And when you're a convert, you kind of have, sometimes you could easily have a sort of view that it's almost perfection, and clearly nothing is. And when you meet people, you realise that they're not quite what you hoped they would be. And I've been lucky, I've been accepted in the Muslim communities as well, whoever I've worked with, wherever I've lived. But I think part of that is because I've always been active and helping and doing things, and so people have known me because of that. But that isn't the case for everyone, and sadly some will say that it's better that they learn about Islam through the teachings, but when they meet the Muslims they kind of feel a bit let down. But I've not really experienced any of that, so I've been lucky. But of course within our community, the Muslim communities, I've always wanted to try and help and do work as best as I can, and we have a lot of issues with lack of empowerment for women, for helping women to become economically active if that's what they want, helping them to understand how to be a good person, how to be a good parent, developing their skills. And this has always been the kind of work that I've done. I set up a Muslim women's charity when, a couple of years after I became Muslim. Didn't really know what I was doing in terms of setting up a charity, but with others we worked at it, and we did some really good work training Muslim women, running workshops, helping them to understand that maybe their life can be better. If they were struggling to understand what the faith meant to them in their life, we would help them with that. If they wanted to start a business, we can help with that. So I've always been involved and always had a passion for working with women and Muslim women, because I think we always see a lot of injustice and a lot of things that, especially for Muslims, that are done in the name of our faith that actually have nothing to do with our faith, and that can have, I think, a disproportionate effect on women, unfortunately. Whether that be domestic violence, whether that be sort of lack of opportunity, women are often sidelined or pushed to a side in a way that I don't believe the faith actually teaches us. We have a situation in Britain which is quite specific, which is where we have lots of masajid here where women aren't even welcome to pray. I've been to places where I've wanted to pray and I've been told, sorry sister, you can't pray here because we haven't got a space. And I thought this kind of attitude is totally against what I believe the Prophet taught and showed us. And so I've always tried to do work with women as well, Muslim women, to try and address and look at some of these issues. But also always wanted to work with alongside men as well. So it's not about just women only work, it's about looking at how you work with men in the communities as well. and celebrating the positives, but also looking at if there are negatives or things that are not working well, to actually redress those and to look at what the issues are and try and do something about it. So I think, for me, being a mother and all of the difficult but the nice things that come with that as well is one of the best things of my life. I have a 15-year-old, a 12, a 10, and then a 7. So we're going through the different kind of stages of life, and I look back and I think some of it I've done good, some I haven't done so well, and we have to always be looking at how we can improve that as a mother, as a wife, as a person who's active in the community. And I've got my own kind of ideas. Currently I'm employed as the executive director of one of the national Muslim organisations in Britain, and actually one of the few women to be in a senior position in the community. And sometimes people find that difficult to accept, and I feel it's very important for me to be there, challenging as it sometimes is, because I think those prejudices that we have within Muslim to Muslim need to be tackled. And often I hear Muslims talk about what's happening out there or against them. So they'll talk about the anti-Muslim hatred or whatever, and all of that is important. But I don't hear enough necessarily about the problems we have within the intra-Muslim community, issues that we know are there. I don't always hear enough being done about that. These issues around women not being allowed to pray in a mosque is something that should be challenged by men, I believe, first, and women join them, and not the other way around. And as a woman, I think I have got a reputation for questioning and challenging and that, and some people find that hard, but I feel that that's the way I need to do things to make change. And I always look and think there's never been a drastic change in history on anything without people pushing and questioning and really taking it forward. So maybe I'm one of those people that has to do that. I don't like confrontation though, so I don't like to challenge people too much, but I think I can sometimes successfully make changes on some of the issues that I know are there. And I see that as part of my role. So I think if I was to sort of sum up the way my journey has been for the last 18 years, and I said to people recently that surely I'm no longer a new Muslim, because I've been Muslim now for 18 years, so I'm like a proper adult Muslim now, because people still talk about new Muslims even after this many years. So I'm not new anymore. I always say to people that after you become Muslim, of course your slate has been wiped clean, but once you become Muslim, thereafter everybody is the same. We don't have any advantages over anybody else when we've converted. And so I suppose for the journey has been really interesting, and I'm at a point in my life now where I feel really, if God gives me life long enough, I feel really excited for what I can do with my life and what I can achieve. And I grew up in an environment where I wasn't really told that you can achieve anything you want in life. So I've had to kind of learn that, teach for myself, and also to show for other people to believe in me and believe that I can do things to make me believe it as well. So the kind of work that I'm doing now, I never would have imagined doing even 5-10 years ago. But because I've had the right people around me, I've had the support from my husband, who's been amazing, and is always encouraging me and pushing me and helping me more than I sometimes do myself. Had it not been for him and the other sort of good people around me, I really don't think I would have been able to achieve anything much, and wouldn't be as positive about myself and my faith and my role in society as I am now. So I feel if I am given life, and then there's a lot that I can achieve, and a lot that I can look back on and learn from, and I continually look at my life as a journey that is moving, and whenever I go anywhere I feel I can learn from others and benefit from that, and see how I can then use that to make my life and maybe other people's lives better. So on that positive note, I hope it's been informative and you've learned something about me. And until the next episode, Assalamu alaikum.